Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends, and thanks as always for being with us today. I'm really excited to introduce you guys today to my friend and colleague in the Colorado real estate market. His name is Matt Hudson, and he is the CEO and founder of Colorado Home Realty. And we are extremely philosophically aligned in the way of running business, finding joy, feeling alive, and attracting your success in the process. And I'm so glad that he's taken the time to share his story with us today. So with no further ado, Matt, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your backstory to how, when, and why you got into real estate and how your story has unfolded over the years to where you are today with this beautiful, successful real estate company and an incredible culture and team. I'm so excited to just dig right in. Let's roll.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you did warn me. We only have 30 minutes, so you're going to have to cut me off here at any moment. Say the other thing that we are philosophically aligned on is late day and reasonable to have a cocktail while having a great conversation. Just a
100%.
Quick plug for you. I've over the years of becoming a personal development coach and a business coach and being the behavioral science junkie and all of that, there's very few people that I've met who I am as philosophically aligned with. And not only philosophically aligned, but in passion for and conviction about the principles that teach success. So I've been so appreciative of the opportunity that I've had to get to know you a little bit better and to get to know your coaching better. It's had a huge impact on people, and I love listening to your strength and your gifts that you bring to others through the experiences you've had. So me, real quickly, I started CHR officially founded in 2005. Opened our doors actually in 2006. I started CHR because I didn't see value in any other brokerage in the Denver marketplace. I was selling a ton of real estate. I was, at the time, was doing 50 to 70 transactions a year. And I felt like there was something kind of quote unquote special that I was looking for. I was young and dumb at the time and didn't know what special meant. I didn't really know what values were. I didn't really know what culture meant. I made every mistake that I said that I wasn't going to make times about 1,000, maybe 10,000, if you ask my wife. It's kind of your story that you read in every business book. It took us 10 years to figure out who we were. It took us 10 years to get really grounded in what we stand for. And from that place, then really magical things started to happen. Kind of backing up a little bit of maybe insight into personality. I grew up on an island. I grew up in a farm. I look for farm kids and college athletes, probably arrogantly because I was a farm kid and a college athlete. But I've learned to surround myself with people who are really have gone through experiences in life that teach them that the only thing they have is the grit within them to be disciplined to the things that will produce the results they want. Whether that's about their personal relationships, their finances, their spirituality, their health and fitness, what have you. Growing up on a farm and growing up on an island was a super cool experience that gave me a great foundation for the things that it was going to take to be an entrepreneur. Over the years, I've learned so much. As you know, I could go on for hours and hours and hours. Is there a particular thing that you would like me to share or point to in my experiences over the last 15 years?
Well, I kind of want to back up a little bit because one of the things I really am putting a lot of attention on these days is sort of exposing the beauty behind helping folks uncover that we shouldn't be building on our weaknesses. I'm curious about your perspective on scaling the real estate business. And we've talked a lot about the diversity in our industry and the fact that there's so many different ways you can do it. And sometimes people hear the word scaling and they immediately think building a huge team. And that's not the only way to scale. But before we really even dig our teeth into that, I'm just kind of curious, you went from selling 50 to 70 homes a year, which is no small feat, to becoming the leader of a growing organization. And I'm actually curious to know, back then when you were doing the 50 to 70 transactions a year, were you already embracing the idea of scaling and leveraging your weaknesses back then? Or were you riding that speeding train of what it looks like to be a solopreneur doing that kind of volume? And then I kind of want to talk and dig into like the transition from being the technician, the selling agent to being a leader, because that's a whole different thing to unpack. But talk to us a little bit about what it looked like to navigate 50 to 70 closings a year. And were you embracing the idea that you needed to get support in better systems and people early on?
It's so interesting. The two questions are so closely related. As I know, I think the second question is such a profound and insightful question. The first question is I didn't know the answer to the second one, so no, I was horrible at it. I didn't know who I was as a leader. I didn't know how to honor myself. I thought that, one of the things that made me, I'm smart, I'm analytical, I work exceedingly hard. And I thought this very traditional thing, which was that the customer's always right. And that kind of mindset, I think, had application to who I became as a leader, which was a really crappy leader because I wanted to make everybody else around me right. So to answer your first question, no, I wasn't very good at it. I had hired an assistant, and I had transaction managers and that sort of thing, but none of them were operating at the level of excellence that I stood for. And I don't know, other than just being a demanding individual, I didn't have the maturity or maybe the clarity to it's okay to be me. It's okay to stand for what I stand for in order to communicate to other people. This is what I want. This is what I need. This is what I need, how I need you to show up. It was always about trying to make other people feel whole. And so I had these two people within me, this extremely hardworking individual who could produce results, but also this individual who was very naturally a coach, who I thought I was supposed to make other people whole. And the combination of those two actually made me a really shitty leader until I found clarity, until I discovered my own values, and that I'm not able to give my gifts to the world until I honor my gifts. And so I learned to honor me at a very high level, which meant these are the things I believe in. These are the things I stand for. The values of our organization are my values. It doesn't mean that they are misaligned with other people. It means that I now need to find people who want to operate consistent with what I stand for and what I believe in. I wrote an article a couple of years ago, and I'm writing a book on this also. This being the CEO, and the name of the book is a Leader's Truth, which is not published yet, so don't try to find it. I found that the thing I was so terrible about is the one thing that I can point to that's a common denominator of all leaders, that we don't embrace leverage and effectively utilize leverage until we get super clear on what do we believe in, what do we stand for, and what's the environment that we believe in and stand for, what must it provide to our clients. And when you can clarify that, when you can articulate that, and then document the ways in which that is actually done, and then hire people who are more talented than you to go then own, be empowered to own, have autonomy, and go execute on those things, understanding very clearly what are we trying to create, what's the experience that we're trying to deliver to people. Then you'll find unbelievable freedom. And you touched on something a little while ago. I actually believe that the chief human aim of being human is peace, freedom, and happiness. It's not money and cars and house. It's peace, freedom, and happiness. And I believe that when we figure out how to really embrace being a leader, whatever that means, whether that's a leader in your family, or it's a leader in you're a solopreneur, or whatever your endeavor is, or you're running a 500 person firm, that when you really embrace your definition of leadership, what you're going to find is freedom, because you're going to give yourself permission for the first time to show up the way that you were meant to show up. Now, I have all kinds of theories and analytics around why we don't show up that way. And it's all the beliefs that were handed to us by well-intended people from the time that we were born, the society that we grew up in, and that was, the lens that was refined over time that teaches us who we're supposed to be. And I think that part of our work is discovering who am I really authentically? I describe what I believe is the greatest human affliction, or at least that I've observed in the 48 years of my life. The greatest human affliction is this incessant need to please other people. And there's, you know, evidence that shows that this is part of who we are in our day. It's part of certainly what we were taught as we were children. It's the strategies that we were as we were growing up. We smile, we get a hug, we please people, we get a cookie, those sorts of things. And suddenly we reach a point in our lives where those are all the same strategies that we know, but it doesn't work being an adult. And it's the reason why we're afraid to hire the talent. It's the reason why we're afraid to make a phone call or to write a note or to ask for the things that we want or to stand up for what we believe in. And it's the greatest human affliction because it's the most exhausting thing that we deal with. We wake up every single day worrying about what everybody else thinks. And it stops us from actually saying, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? And what do I want? And I believe that it is the greatest obstacle to great leadership. That if we're always worrying about what everybody else thinks, we'll never actually lead relative to what we know or believe to be true. And I believe that part of the beauty of leadership and part of the freedom that comes from being grounded in this leadership is that you don't need to be right. You just need to have the courage to say, look, I may not be right. Given my role, this is what I see. This is the role that I play. This is the direction that we're going to go for these reasons. You can choose to follow or not. And that is entirely up to you. When you learn, I believe that when you learn to do that, you will then attract people who believe in what you stand for, believe what you believe. And when you do that, you are going to find more freedom as a result of the people that you surround yourself with, the talent that you surround yourself with, who will simply do a lot of things better than you do. We're a relatively small organization. We've got a little over 100 agents in the company. We will not grow to more than 125 in the Denver marketplace. And we have a support staff of almost 20 people. And I am a ridiculous believer in I'm really, really bad at a lot of things. And so I want to surround myself with people who are uber talented at those things so I can focus on my gifts. And I think it's one of the greatest things that people can learn that will truly give them freedom if they will learn, if freedom is the aim, if they will first learn what are the beliefs that I hold about myself that hold me back from actually even embracing the idea that I deserve that.
So I love that you're talking about how, talking about living in your gifts and, the affliction of pleasing others. It's something that we talk about a lot in the coaching calls, is that most people that I know in this industry are caregivers at heart. They're servant-hearted people, which is a blessing and a curse, because what ultimately attracts folks to trust us as their advisor in real estate is that they feel that we're going to take good care of them. And we have pride in taking care of people. The problem is we often don't realize that when we say yes to one thing, we're saying no to something else. And often we're saying no to ourselves. So what I want to ask you is two questions. Number one, I'm curious, do you believe with everything that you've studied and practiced and messed up and succeeded at doing, right? Do you believe now that the ability to lead someone else, the ability to delegate successfully and be able to attract the right kind of people into your organization and to attract the right kind of support, do you believe it's something that can be learned by anyone? Or do you believe that when you take someone's personality profile test, it's going to tell you whether or not they will thrive as a leader or not?
It's interesting. I'm going to give you was that two questions or just one?
Well, let's start with one question. Do you believe that leadership is something that can be learned by anyone?
Yeah.
Or do you think it has to be part of your DNA to make the transition from I'm an awesome technician, I love selling homes and I love customer service, to I'm willing to delegate things that are outside my zone of genius?
I think it can be learned by anyone. I do think there is an aptitude that has more of a tendency and maybe kind of the commonly understood characteristics of a human being that describe leadership. But I think the failing of that definition is that it assumes leadership only comes in the form of the Fortune 500 sort of company, and you got to wear, your red tie and blue suit sort of crap. The reality is that if we can be clear on what we want and simply be truthful with other people about what their role is in helping accomplish that objective, then you're a leader. So I do believe that anybody can learn leadership, especially if the context of that is learning to delegate. I do think that the more deeply rooted or the less introspective the individual might be about the beliefs they have about themselves that hold them back from actually pursuing that which they want is the bigger obstacle. And I am a believer that personality profiles will give you a strong indication of the commitment the individual has, the natural behaviors with which they will show up that demonstrate an aptitude toward leadership versus areas where they might struggle toward leadership. But let's take my personality profile as an example. According to a tool that I use, my personality profile is called an entrepreneur. It's about one eighth of 1% of the population. Sorry, 0.8% of the population. It's the number one CEO profile. I'm highly assertive, highly analytical. I move with a ton of speed. I'm very detail oriented. I'm very logical, and I'm very creative. That may all sound great on a resume, but it also means that I can be a total asshole. And so that's not. It is like again, according to the tool, like my leadership style is described as dictatorship. I can absolutely show up that way. This is not the leader that I want to be. And so you look at a different personality profile. There's a different profile called a debater. And the debater is they're highly social, they're highly patient, they're not detail oriented at all, and they're not assertive. Like you would look at that person and say, like, it's actually the personality profile that Walmart uses for a Walmart greeter. And so would you describe somebody who's a Walmart greeter as a natural born leader? Probably not. And yet I think you and I also see something in humanity that says, no, let's set all that aside. We can all learn how to lead relative to the vision that we have for the life that we want to live. That person that might be the Walmart greeter, they're naturally very social and they're naturally very nurturing. I'm neither one of those things. I'm naturally very demanding and I'm naturally very focused on projects and strategy and analytics. And so I think it's simply balancing, not judging yourself relative to the traditional characteristics of what leadership is, and instead simply recognizing that I, as a human being, have a thing that I know that I want to accomplish in my life. I'm going to accept the fact that I'm not talented or good at, or it's not the best use of my time on these things. And there's simply some practices that I need to be dedicated to that I need to do every day or every week or every month that will help me utilize resources that I'm surrounded by at a higher level. And does it mean that you're going to grow a $10 billion firm? Maybe not, but maybe so. I don't want to have the preconceived notions of a personality profile. And I know that anybody can learn at least these principles and choose how they want to apply them. But I'll tell you, I mean, you can see a little bit of my bookshelf. Like I think I'm reading like 15 different books right now. And sometimes it's just absolutely exhausting because the more that I know, the more that I learn, the more that I am so clear on what it takes, the more I'm clear on how little I know. It is, there isn't a place where we are going to arrive that says, now I'm ready. We're never going to be ready. We're always growing as human beings. We're always going to grow as leaders. And the reason why we're always going to grow as leaders, at least in part, is we're always going to discover more about ourselves. And leadership is about truth. And the more that we learn about ourselves, the more that we have the capability of being truthful. I find that truth is the number one issue in this industry, whether it's being a leader, being an agent, being a leader of your family, just having freedom in your life. I think it's fundamental to everything that we do.
Well, it's interesting because a couple of things that you mentioned there were that, relative to the vision of the life they want to live, right? And like, sometimes I feel like folks in our industry, they lose sight of, you're talking about the more I know myself, right? And because we're so compelled to try to take care of others and to please others and to become exhausted in the process of doing so, we then play small as a byproduct because we don't take the time to figure out who we are and what we really want. And we start to question, what are we going to sacrifice if we look at success as it's defined by growth in our business or financial success or whatever? So it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what level of the business you're at. If you're willing to accept the fact that you're not good at all things, and you're willing to get to know yourself well enough to know that you're not good at all things, and when you force yourself to do the things that you're not good at and you don't enjoy, you're also exhausting yourself. You're trying so hard to please others that you're willing to go above and beyond and to push through your comfort zone in areas that you may not be naturally gifted, right? Like you may not love sales, but you're going to figure it out in order to survive. Or you may not love the details of the transaction and the dates and deadlines and checking boxes and crossing T's and dotting I's, but you care so much about pleasing your client, you're going to figure out how to be good at all those things. But in the process, you're finding yourself exhausted. And this is where I feel like as a byproduct, too many people end up playing small because they have this association between, well, sure, I would love to grow my business. I'd love to experience more success in my business or my financial life or whatever. But there's this correlation association to what it's going to cost me and the sacrifice of my time, energy, happiness. So then we just choose to play small. So then we convince ourselves we're good with X. Like, if I can do X, I'd be fine. And it's like, I want to encourage people to think beyond good enough and just fine. And I'm not saying like everybody needs to be hungry enough to grow their business to some ridiculous level or to have some big organization. But the sooner people accept the fact that they're not good at all things and they're willing to take that stuff off their plate, the ROI has more to do with the joy, the energy that comes to you as a result of not trying to muscle through activities that are sucking the life out of you. The joy and the energy comes to you. And next thing you know, as a byproduct, your business is growing, maybe more than you can handle, but that's an opportunity to then give that gift to others. And that's where you can enlist the help of others. So my question for you next is like, at what level do you think that folks should be thinking about this? And again, it's like, I don't want the solopreneur and the solo agent to think that I'm encouraging every person out there to build some huge team. But at what point do you think people need to be paying attention to, you know what, I'm not really great at a lot of things. And the sooner I get help with the things I'm not good at, the sooner I'm going to have more energy, more joy, and as a result, predictable growth in my business, which provides opportunities for myself and others around me.
Peter Drucker, for those of you that don't know, he was originally a journalist. He became a management consultant. He's been quoted over the years in many different, Harvard Business Reviews and Forbes and blah 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 as a bit of a contemporary philosopher in business. And Peter Drucker said, "Hire the right talent in the key positions and do it before you think you can afford to." And he was saying that about all businesses. I absolutely believe that is true. Now, I think that there is still a measured approach, but I absolutely believe that is true, that for most people, you're looking, the agents in particular are, but I'd say this is true of any business owner, are looking for two things. They're looking for freedom and they're looking for income growth. And I think most people actually don't make the mistake of hiring assistants too soon. I think they make the mistake of hiring really low talent. And what they end up doing, and tell me if you think this is true, I'm going to go hire somebody to do everything that I don't want to do anymore. And I want to pay them $25,000 a year. Okay, so let's be really clear. You're talented enough to run a $200,000 a year business or a $250,000 a year business. And to eliminate 90% of the things that you do, you think you can hand that off for $25,000 a year. So I see it as being an absolute joke, the way agents try to grow their business. And it's not their fault. It's just because they don't have somebody guiding them. I think that if growth is part of the goal, then ultimately, and ultimately stability so that you can actually leave and have somebody else running your business or be there as a support and resource within your business. then you've got to have key talent in the right positions. For some people, that's going to be a full-time assistant. For some people, it's going to be a part-time assistant. For some people, it's going to be make the decision to utilize the leverage that already exists within your organization better. Stop doing stupid shit would be the way that I would describe that one.
Totally.
For some people, it's going to be a full-time or a part-time buyer's agent. Those all fail. They all fail for only a handful of reasons based on my observation and coaching of people over the years. One, they're too lazy to put in writing what are the expectations? What do I really want to get out of this role? And what does this person need to own in order to be successful in this role? Two, they are unwilling or maybe are unaware of their responsibility of you're choosing to be a leader. There is a company that has a particular model around how you grow a team that if you couldn't tell, I have a little bit of an issue with. And that the kind of philosophy of this model is as a team leader, you should make as much money as you possibly can and tell everybody else what to do that doesn't serve them in any way, shape, or form, only serves your vision. And I think that's just wrong. I think part of what's hard about being a leader, but also part of what's beautiful about being a leader is that our job isn't to just cast a vision. That's actually pretty easy for visionary people. Ask me something that you want to do. I can tell you what my vision is associated with it. My job as a leader is to help the person who works for me and with me to understand how their vision gets to play out within mine. Like our job is to help people be fulfilled, not to beat the crap out of them and suck the life out of them. And so, while I do believe that anybody can learn these things, I don't think most people are willing to. And I think that most people should stay an individual agent and not hire somebody because they're going to harm that person unless they are dedicated to learning what it means to be a leader. They'll have their own definition. In the year 2015, I only had one goal. My goal for the entire year was to define what leadership meant to me. Because I had always been a leader, a captain of the football team and captain of the baseball team and student body president and blah, blah, blah. Nobody ever taught me what leadership meant. I was always thrown into the role. And I was really, really bad at it because I had no idea what the hell it meant. And so I was just reading voraciously and observing other people and making my own mistakes and beating the hell out of myself along that journey as well. And it wasn't until 5, maybe 6 years ago where I stepped back and went, wait a minute, what does it mean to me? What does leadership mean to me? And that's where for the first time in my life at 42, 43 years old, I became relentlessly dedicated to the art, to the craft of leadership. And I firmly believe that if you're going to step into a leadership role, it's got to be a labor of love. For most agents, you'll make more money and you'll actually have more freedom over the first couple of years of testing out this leadership thing by not being a leader, because you're going to screw it up in a lot of ways. But when you screw it up with people who have been there, when you have the humility to actually embrace people like you, Aaron, who can guide people along the way of what does it mean to be a leader and how do I show up better and more talented and invest in my people, it's so damn rewarding because our organizational why, what we stand for, is not making money and selling houses. Like when I talk to people about coming to CHR, I say, look, if all you're interested in is in selling real estate, like go do that somewhere else. I'm interested in you as a human being of what is going to make life extraordinary for you. So for us, we realize that our passion, our belief, our mission, our why is helping people discover extraordinary. And I personally believe, and I'm absolutely projecting this on everybody who's listening to this, that I believe that that's part of our responsibility as a leader. That if you're going to hire somebody, if you're going to bring somebody onto your team, you just chose to be responsible for an aspect of their life, an aspect of their future. And the only thing that you can choose to do is two things. Be totally truthful about what you stand for and believe in and what you expect from them and how they need to show up. And then two, invest. Invest on a very regular basis in their performance and in their success. One of the best books I have ever read, it literally is my business Bible, is The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And have you read the book? For anybody who wants to be a leader, this will distill it down into a roadmap. You got to have one. Either you're going to go My mistake was I was too arrogant, and maybe even too insecure, in my early 30s to seek great mentorship. I didn't surround myself with people who had already been there. And part of this, I think, was being a farm kid. And what I remember being taught at a very early age, figure it out on your own. Like that was the way that I was wired, was figure it out on your own. And so that led to really dumb and unwise decisions where I spent a lot of time making a whole bunch of mistakes that other smart people who had been down that path could help me avoid. People like yourself, people like me are super passionate about helping people figure out what are you passionate about and how are you going to show up as a leader if you're going to go down this path, and what do you really need to be prepared for. So I could go on for another 25 minutes, and I know we have like 5 minutes.
No, I just love it. I mean, I love how you were saying that, if growth is actually the goal. And the interesting thing is that, it's not the only goal, right? It's like, so this is the thing that I think people need to leave this call with, is that if the two primary motives of going 100% commission and becoming a self-employed person in any aspect of industry is that you thought you were going to get more freedom and more financial success, and then you go along your journey and you say to yourself, if growth is actually the goal, and it's like, okay, so then we try to grow and then we bottleneck. And so we hit our head against the ceiling and we just convince ourselves it's better off playing small, because I don't like the way that I felt when I started to exceed my time capacity. I think the biggest takeaway is that if growth is the goal and you fear it because you fear the expense of your time and energy and emotion and ability to be present with your loved ones and all this other stuff, then you're never going to get to freedom and financial success. Like it's not going to be freedom without financial freedom. And if growth is actually the goal, but you also want the freedom, then I think it's time to embrace the idea that you're not great at everything. None of us are great at everything. Like, it's okay to realize you're not awesome at things, and that when you feel that sensation well up in you that this thing is making me feel dread, or I'm procrastinating it, and then I beat myself up over how I keep on missing the boat and hitting my activity goals, or why can't I bring myself to do that CMA and get that mailer out and do the annual reviews. Like, if there's something that's coming up for you where you feel yourself not being consistent, it's probably time to admit that it's not something you're awesome at, or maybe you don't enjoy it, and that it's okay. And wouldn't you agree that there's an evolution as well? Like in every other industry, it's like you get an entry-level job, you learn some stuff, you master it, you become an expert, and then you get a promotion and you release control of certain responsibilities as you learn new ideas and you master new things. And you evolve as a professional in almost every other industry. But for some reason in real estate, we feel the need to hold on to all the things. And it's like, just because you used to be good at it, just because you used to enjoy it, which, by the way, sometimes we all find joy in the challenge of learning something new and of pushing through our fears and of mastering something we've never mastered before. But just because you used to enjoy it and you used to be good at it doesn't inherently mean you have to do it anymore. So like, if you want the combination of growth and freedom, it's likely you might need to open your mind to the possibility that there's others that could be enlisted in your journey. And in doing so, you're creating an opportunity. You're creating a path for others to follow, right? Like, most of us fall into this business somehow, some weird way. Not many people know they're going to become a realtor or a lender when they're in college, right? And so as we enlist the help of others who have skills that we lack and we give them a path, we're opening the door to the possibilities that this industry can provide, which are incredible. I mean, it can be an incredible vehicle to both freedom and financial success.
Oh, no, absolutely no question. I mean, there's so much that you said in there that is like 11 more podcasts. And seriously, I mean, I think it's the reason why people need coaching from people like you, because you're willing to ask the questions and you're willing to challenge people's assumptions. There's aspects of this industry that I absolutely despise. I hate our industry because it is full of incompetence and mediocrity. And it's full of incompetence and mediocrity because one of the things that you said made me think about when people first get into this business. The first question that they ask is, why should I pay you a bunch of commission? I did the same thing. And not to the consumer, but to the brokerage that they're with, which inherently has them saying, I'm smarter than you, who has been in this business however long you have, which actually is a judgment of the brokerages in this industry, which is also right. But the problem that I see is that agents haven't ever actually dedicated themselves to their craft and growth and professionalism in such a way where they begin to realize the things that I did that I thought made me successful. Like I designed the brochure and I pound the sign in the yard and look at all the things I do. That's not what people want from you. That is not what consumers care about. And in fact, I can tell you that it's super easy for me to say, if I sit in front of a consumer, which I haven't in a decade, other than consultation with friends of mine that still come to me and I refer them off. But if I sit in front of somebody, I'm like, no, I have only a handful of jobs. My primary job is to understand your objectives. My secondary job is to understand your resources, and my tertiary job is to distill those down into an action plan that helps you meet your objectives. Then what you need to know is that I'm surrounded by all the resources that help us get there, and then my job is to be your consultant along the way. That's it. Somebody else pounds the sign in the yard. I got a graphic designer that does this. I got a photographer. I got a stager. I got a lender. I got an inspector. I got a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually really arrogant to think that we're supposed to do all of those things. And that might cause a few people to bristle a little bit, but start looking at what you're doing that you're not actually very good at, that actually validates you as a human being. And you think that it justifies your value in the eyes of the consumer, and you're just wrong. Like consumers want only a couple of things. And they don't want you pounding a sign in the yard. They would rather you analyze the industry or understand economic trends or be able to give them advice with respect to what's happening with developments across the street, or go educate yourself on things that are actually meaningful. In order to do that, you got to have a guy who does that. You got to have somebody who designs the brochures. So what you're talking about is they got to have leverage. The last thing I'll share in this little soapbox of mine is I think that there's a balance in there of, yes, I think people are attached to activities. And yes, I agree that there is a fear that people have of my time is going to be consumed if I'm too successful. I think those are actually bullshit excuses, though. I think those are easy things to point to that don't have the individual telling themselves the truth about what really holds them back, that is actually pervasive in every aspect of their lives. That same person who says, ooh, I can't sell more than 10 homes a year because, I got to spend time with my kids and I want to make sure that I work out and I want to make sure I have time to go to church. And like, I know people that sell 40 homes a year and live a remarkable life. I know people who sell 80 homes a year and have fantastic teams, or 120 homes a year. And what they have is freedom. The truth is that we don't want to grow beyond 10 transactions a year because we don't want to do the work that it takes for one of two reasons. Either you're just lazy and no coaching that you can provide or that I can provide is going to fix that. You may as well just shut off the damn podcast right now because you're just wasting your time. But I don't think that's most people. I think what most people have is such a deep fear of judgment from other people that it holds them back from doing any of the activities that will actually have them engage with human beings, that have those human beings understand what's their heart really and what's their talent that helps the consumer actually achieve the objective. And so it really comes down to frequency of engagement. Most individuals hide themselves in a little cocoon, hold themselves back from human interaction because they don't want to be judged by other people. Why do they want to go hire an assistant? So that assistant will do all the business development things that have them feel safe, not because it's not the best use of their time. And so I think one of the delicate aspects of this conversation is, if you're going to hire resources, you've got to hire resources that allow you to focus on only the things that you can do. And if you are in real estate, whether you're growing a team, you're growing an organization, or you just want to produce at a higher level, your number one activity is human engagement and service. And that means you're the rainmaker. You're the business development person. You're not the salesperson. You're the consultant. You're the advocate. I say serve, don't sell. But you got to serve enough people. And you can't farm that out to an assistant. The assistant can create the real estate reviews. The assistant can give you the list of the people that you need to call, can manage the CRM and update the notes and plan the party and that sort of thing. But you have to show up. And so to me, the biggest obstacle for anybody, and I don't think that scale is quite the right word in this context, but I would say finding fulfillment and belief in self in any aspect of life is learning to let go of the preconceived notions about themselves of who they're supposed to be, that has them judging everybody else, that then creates the mirror that has them judging themselves all day long, every single day, with respect to what everybody else might think. It is an exhausting way to live life. And I don't believe it's how we were meant to live. I call it the unconscious ego. And the unconscious ego is driving the vast majority of the behavior that we engage in every single day. And its motivation is to keep us safe and right. And the truth is, when we can learn to become aware of the ego, we can acknowledge its existence, we can acknowledge its perspective, but we can treat it almost like this entity that's outside of us, that is sitting on our shoulder, trying to control our behavior and trying to keep itself safe, but it's not actually trying to serve us. It's trying to serve itself. And instead, if we can be objective about it, it could be saying something that's legitimate or valid that we want to have application or apply to our lives. But when we can step outside of it and say, that's just a fear that's holding me back. I know it's totally irrational. It's my unconscious ego that's driving me. And instead, and again, this is yet another 3 podcasts that I really do. I find that people have this moment of epiphany where it's like the veil is lifted, that life is a little bit less opaque. And they start to realize that I really get to show up in this world however I choose to, however I want to. I really get to be this authentic person that my heart and my mind have been telling me that I am, but have been masked by all this crap that I've been taught about myself and taught about what's possible. And I think that's the biggest obstacle to leadership. I think it's actually the biggest obstacle to activity. I sold 50 to 70 homes a year without an assistant. I was also originating about 100 loans a year by myself at the time. I had a great processor. I was really, really busy. And I'm not the most talented guy in the world. I just worked really, really hard, and I had incredible integrity. I did what I said I was going to do. I told people what I wanted, and I told people what I needed from them. It took me a long time to learn great leadership. And I will say that the more that I've learned and as good of a leader as I've become, I now know how little I know. And that's part of the beauty too. If we can embrace that as beautiful instead of oppressive or scary, we always get to peel back the layers. So yeah, it's an exciting conversation to me because
Awesome.
It can create freedom for people.
100%. And that's what the name of the podcast is Pursuing Freedom. So, I mean, drop the mic, Matt. Way to go. So I really appreciate you. Seriously. Thank you. We could go on for hours, and the fact that we're recording this after 5 p.m. with cocktails in hand means that it could really go on for hours. So we're going to save you that, my Pursuing Freedom friend. But I do want to thank you again, Matt, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Awesome. And to all my Pursuing Freedom friends, thank you as always for tuning in. And, I always like to beg you at the end that if you're enjoying the content you're getting here, please be sure to scroll all the way down inside of the Pursuing Freedom podcast on whatever application you're using and look for that little pencil and share a review, because it helps us continue to attract great guests like Matt and help you get this content to continue you on your journey to building a life you don't need a vacation from. I love and appreciate you.